So for those of you that don't know, my name is Paul Barker, and a big, big, big welcome to Midlife Crisis, to Midlife Calling. And before we begin, let us just take a moment, slow down, and just take a breath and allow ourselves to land and arrive here for the workshop. Taking a moment just to let go of anything that you may have brought with you, anything that may be going on in your life or around your life. And in the next hour, we're going to explore how what can feel like a midlife crisis or a midlife challenge or a transition, with whatever name fits and works for you, is actually a powerful calling to a new chapter of your life. And as we go into this next hour, I just want to do a couple of agreements. There will be times to share into the chat, just one or two comments here and there. I'll ask for that. And afterwards, we may, anybody who wants to, I'll be here. Anybody who wants to ask questions, chitty chat for a short while. And so I just want to say, just be respectful, please. And remember, this is, I'd like this as a confidential space. So if somebody does end up sharing anything that may be a bit confidential, please, let's just be respectful. Did you all, and have you all got your pen and paper? Pen and paper, pen and paper. Yep. Okay. Right. So this isn't about fixing ourselves, but this is about beginning to understand where we're actually at, where we find ourselves. It's about listening deeply to what life is asking of you right now. So first of all, please just put a little introduction into the chat, perhaps your name, where you're from, just to bring everybody's energy into the event tonight. And as you're doing that, a one word to describe how you're arriving. How are you feeling as you arrive? Thank you, Patrick. John. Lovely. Beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to continue. And to give this a kind of a base, a foundation, if you like, I want to start with something very real. Something it's not theory, it's not a modality, it's a story, and it's my own story. Because if you found yourself here, wondering perhaps what's next, or maybe why life is shaking you up a bit, which it often does in midlife, I just want you to know that I've been there. And each of us reaches a point in our life where the old ways stop working. The old ways of being, the old ways of thinking, the old ways of doing, the old ways of existing. But that's not failure. That's the soul's way of calling us deeper. So I'm going to start my story at the low point. 27 years ago, after the breakdown of my marriage, I hit what I know was the dark wood. I felt utterly lost. I was confused, ashamed, and alone. And my sense of worth had gone out the window. And I remember sitting there thinking, how had it come to this? How had I ended up here? I was 38 years old. And if I'm honest, I really didn't know who I was or where I was. And at first, I did the typical man thing. I blamed everybody. I blamed anything except for me, because the pain was just too unbearable to face at the time. And at that time, I came across this part of a poem by a gentleman called Dante, who was a 13th century Italian poet. And this captured for me exactly where I was and how I felt. And it's in the middle of the road of my life. I awoke in a dark wood where the true way was wholly lost. Where the true way was wholly lost. And I was lost. I was disorientated because I had lost my map. I had lost how to navigate where I was. So a quick question. Anyone here ever had that feeling of, I just don't know where I am right now? And perhaps you're feeling that you've kind of lost, your own map. You've lost your direction of where you're going. A nod, a raise of a hand, anything is good. Okay. And then came a turning point. And that turning point, there were two moments. And on their own, very unique, but together, they produced something quite phenomenal for me. And the first one was, I found a business card tucked at the very back of my bedside table. I don't know how long it had been there. But it led me to a holistic organization. And there I met a man who became at the time, he was my first real mentor. And he became a guide, someone who gave me some form of, initially at that time, some solid ground to walk on. And then a few months later, I was in Spain, taking a short break from being a father of two, separated at the time, not quite divorced, but so I was a single dad, two children, running my own business, running myself to the bone, ragged. And a friend of mine said, come on, you need a break. And he lived in Malaga in Spain. So off I went. And one evening, I was flicking through a magazine and I turned a page and there was a half-page advert. And there was Machu Picchu, a big condor, and every hair in my body went up. It was like somebody had plugged me into the mains. And I just knew that I had to go on this trip. And it was run by Dr. Alberto Villoldo. I didn't understand it then. But looking back, this was the moment the crisis element began to shift and change actually into an initiation. More of a in the liminality space that we can find ourselves, and I'll come into that in a minute. So just take a short moment. Think about a time in your life when something or someone unexpectedly called to you. They may have called you, or something called you, that you couldn't explain it, but you just knew there was something behind the meaning, that you perhaps had to do something, but you knew that it mattered. Just bring that to mind for a second. Well, what followed for me was not instant transformation. It was a period of time, a number of years. And the problem was that it probably could have been a lot faster, but I didn't have a map and I didn't have the right support. I didn't have mentors, elders who could help me on the way, who could help me to navigate where I was. So in lieu of that, I went to many workshops and retreats and trainings, trying to understand who I really was beneath all the noise. I wrestled with my own shadows, self-denial, alcoholism, pretending everything was okay, and yes, of being a nice guy. Of course, there were moments where I nearly gave up. Yet every detour, every dead end, every night I thought I'd failed, all became part of the bigger picture and the bigger teachings and the bigger learnings. And slowly, I began to see that what I thought I wanted in my head wasn't what my heart and my soul wanted, and actually what I needed. And that was a hard truth, and one that actually set me free. And it meant that when I stopped trying to control and force everything, I began to open my heart and allow and realize that there was so much more out there, so much more to life. Well, then came the breakthrough, the realization, the big realization. I was at an event in Birmingham, England. There were around about 300 participants. And it was a personal development weekend. And right at the very beginning, we had to find a partner and share our story. And but we only had a minute to share our story, which was quite interesting. There was a reason behind that. Anyway, I was on my way back to my seat after sharing, and I felt a hand on my shoulder. And a gentleman asked me to come up onto the stage. So, somewhat sheepishly, I went up and was greeted by the facilitator, a guy called Dr. Rue. Very, very nice, really wonderful guy. And he handed me the microphone and just asked me to tell my story in a minute, just as I had done just previously. And suddenly, I suddenly became aware how comfortable I felt. I didn't freeze. I didn't stutter. I just felt really, really comfortable. And I just knew in that moment that this is where I should be, on a stage, talking, teaching. And I realized in that moment, I'd actually moved on, and I really was no longer the person I had been. And I really had crossed that threshold, that one that takes us from confusion to clarity, from self-doubt to a renewed sense of who I was becoming. That's when it all began to take shape. So this is a lived experience that we're talking about here. So let's explore this a little bit deeper. So, midlife as a rite of passage. So, gentlemen, each one of us reaches a point where the old ways of being and doing stop working. And as I've said, that's not a failure. It's actually the soul's way of calling us deeper. For many men, midlife feels like a crisis. Relationships lose their spark, work drains them rather than inspires them, and distractions no longer numb that quiet ache that they can no longer ignore. But let's be frank, midlife isn't a failure to fix. It's actually a rite of passage. And the reason that we don't know how to fix it is because we've lost the understanding of rites of passage and what they really truly mean. Traditional cultures, men were guided through various thresholds and initiations. We don't have that today. And without these guides, many men find themselves lost and restless in repetition, facing loss and challenge and ordeal, but never know how to navigate their way through it. So this work that I'm going to talk about now is for me to provide men with a map they can use to navigate this transition. And I would say that it's not just this transition. I'm focused here on this one, but it actually, the framework will work with all transitions that you come through. So let's take a look at the map. So the map begins with endings, or what is, or what has, or what may be about to. So every passage begins with something perhaps falling apart, a loss. That could be in your work, a relationship, could be part of your identity. And let's face it, endings are uncomfortable because they confront us with reality and truth, and they confront us with loss. And yet, they are signaling and signals to us that the old life can no longer hold who we're becoming. Next, we move to the separation, or the letting go, a stepping away from the familiar, from the roles and routines that once defined us. This is where we face the truth that transformation asks us for space and time. And we cannot cross the next threshold while clinging on to what we know. We've got to let go. This is followed by what we call the liminal space, the in-between. This is the wilderness between the old and the new. The word liminal comes from the meaning threshold, a time of uncertainty, disorientation, and searching, often finding things that we're doing are just really not working. And yet, it is in the liminal space that the real work happens, where the change begins to happen. We find new insights. We can discover new meaning and new purpose and new direction. But we can only do that when we do the inner work on ourselves. And it's that inner work that we do on ourselves that is a huge part of the key. And then finally, the return. And eventually, after we do the inner work and spend time trawling around dead ends and dark alleys, we come back to the return. And we cross back into our life with a deeper sense of meaning, a clearer sense of ourselves, and a calling to serve, often in some new way. The return completes the passage on one level, but on another level, it is in itself a new beginning. And what we bring back after this journey is often referred to as a gift or our gift, because it's something that we bring back that where we can better serve our families, our communities, and the world at large. So it's a huge and big learning space. So now let's dive in to each one a little bit more. And before we do, just a quick question. Where are you? Where are you? Where do you feel with maybe just one area of your life, something that may be resonating here? Maybe subtle, it may be strong. Are you in the ending? Is there something separating? In between or return? If you feel to share it in the chat, please do. If not, that's no problem. Always good to check in and see where are we now. Thank you, Chris. Ah, nice, John. Yeah, nice. So now, sorry, that was the where are you now? So now we're going to enter the heart of today's section, which is a guided breakthrough journey designed to help you to listen for your own next steps. So during this next short period, this next phase, you will have a few spacious moments to do some contemplation and some journaling on the bits that we're going to go through. So, are you ready? Yay. Okay, so let us begin with the first phase. And this is going to be around honoring what has or is or about to fall away. To name and honor what it is. And of course, just a reminder, it could be around relationships, work roles, beliefs, ways of being, any area of your life or your being. So I invite you now just to take a moment to settle into your chair. I invite you to close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths. Every new beginning starts with an ending. So take a moment to notice and contemplate what in your life feels like it has ended, completed, run its course maybe. And as you do the contemplation, you may feel sadness, you may feel relief, you may feel some resistance. All are welcome. I'm just going to pause talking and just let you contemplate for a moment. What is ending in my life right now? Maybe consider, what are you ready to let go of? Or what are you still holding on to, even though it's ended? Don't worry about thinking about all of the questions. Just ponder on whichever question is the one that's calling you. Okay, bring your note taking to and end if you can. It's very important to honor what is ending, because when we do so, we clear the way for what wants to emerge. And of course, in the world we live in today, everybody's always in such a hurry. They don't want to deal or look at endings properly. They want to move on. Some men say, I want to get the hell out of here. But as we grow and as we move forward in our lives, there is so much that we can learn from endings. So much. It's such a valuable piece of the work to look at what ended and how it ended and why it ended, all of those questions. Okay, so we're going to move on, and we're now going to move into what we call the separation, the letting go, and the descent. To symbolically release what no longer serves so that we can prepare the crossing of the threshold. So again, inviting you to close your eyes. I want you to imagine that you're in a natural landscape. You may be on a forest path, a mountain trail, or walking along a riverbank. But I want you to walk slowly. And I want you to become aware that you're carrying what has been. Around an ending, what has been. Feel the weight, the roles, the expectations, the stories. Feel the weight of it as you walk. Feel the weight of them as you walk. Now imagine that you come to an opening. The path takes you to a little opening. It could be a flat area on the mountain. It could be a little glade in the forest. Or it could be a junction where the water turns or something changes course. And you find something there that could be a tree stump, or it could be a rock, or just a place where you can set these weights down one by one. So the invitation is to take your time. Going to give you a minute or a few minutes and put down the weights that you're carrying one by one with gratitude. And as you put each one down, try to make it a gesture of significance, maybe a very deep inhale and exhale, or some physical gesture, or a bowing, or a prayerful hands, or whatever is right for you. You have a few minutes, so take your time. And as you do it, notice how you feel. Do you feel some form of relief or lightness, maybe? Maybe you feel you're becoming more open. And when you've done, maybe you wish to put some notes on paper in your journal. Thirty more seconds. So, so just bringing your awareness back to here now, and we will begin to continue. We're going to move on to the next part of the map, which is the third phase, which is the in between the threshold phase itself. And of course, this liminality space is where a lot of our old identities and things dissolve, leave, and new insights arise and new ways of being surface. So again, inviting you to close your eyes And this time you are in between two worlds, no longer who you were and not yet who you're becoming. And this is a safe space to be unfinished. In other words, you haven't yet done what you need to do to become. But in this space, you're going to meet an inner elder or an inner guide, a wise figure who carries your soul's wisdom. So just take a moment and just connect to your inner guide in whatever way that means for you. You can imagine it, you can feel it, you may see it in your mind. And I want you to ask the elder some questions. And the first one is, what truth do I need to face? What truth do I need to face? The next question is, what wisdom must I remember? There is a third question, what is calling me forward? So take your time, ask the elder. The three questions are up on the screen in case you've forgotten them. And take your time to ask and speak with the elder. What truth do I need to face? What wisdom must I remember? What is calling me forward? So when you're ready, you may now wish to write down some of the thoughts, the communication, the questions. So just take a few minutes just to get clear on what was the message from the elder, what wisdom must I remember? What is calling me forward? And of course, what truth do I need to face? Last minute. Okay. Unfortunately, I would love to give you much longer because I know these things can require more time. But how are you all doing? Good, good. Okay. Are you ready for the return? Are you ready to come home? Okay. Good. So the final stage is the return, sometimes referred to as the integration phase. That place where we come back with new awareness, a renewed sense of who we are, feeling more grounded. So for one last time, I invite you to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that you are walking back. That you're walking through a threshold. It could be a big doorway, a big gate, a bridge over a river. And I want you to notice that you are carrying and bringing with you only what feels essential. Only what feels essential. It may be a feeling. It may be a word. It may be an image. But you're not the same person that you were at the beginning. You have crossed something today, even if only a small step. What you bring back with you can be an image, a word, a feeling. Remembering that you're only bringing back with you what is essential. And as you cross this final threshold to return back, what insight or message did I receive? What is one action or attitude that I want to carry forward? How can I honor what has changed? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to contemplate the final return, whether you're crossing a bridge, a river, a gateway, a doorway. As you do so with reverence, do so with honor, do so with nobility. And the questions are up on the screen. What insight or message did I receive? What is one action or attitude I want to carry forward? How can I honor what has changed? You have a few minutes. 1 minute to go. Okay. So the offering after you have done the return here today is to trust what you have seen and felt today. You have begun the journey forward to that calling, that deeper sense of meaning and purpose. Trust what came up. Of course, this is a micro amount of time to do this type of work. So we're going to move now to the last piece, the closing and the integration. So the invitation at this particular point is to put something in the chat as a one word. How are you feeling now? What are you taking with you? Or maybe a phrase or a word. That doesn't have to be one word. It could be a little phrase. What are you taking with you? What has come out of today? Thank you, Chris. I'm just pausing to let you type for a moment because I know what it's like when somebody says put something in the chat and everybody's racing and suddenly the people have moved on or the person's moved on before you've had a chance. Lovely, Jürgen. That's lovely. Yeah. Pat, that is absolutely the beat, the piece there. Step by step, little by little. Because we enable us to keep our foundations. John, reminder to choose what I find enjoyable in life and do more of that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So for me, the outcomes that I hope that you can walk away with today are that is to reframe this midlife crisis or transition not as a failure. It's a natural step in your own personal evolution. An understanding of where you are on the map. And to leave with a tangible, for you, next step. So moving forward, if something today has tweaked you, stirred an ache, a question, a sense that another chapter is calling, maybe you can't even name it yet, what that is. There are other ways to continue to work. And if you will permit me, I would just like to go through 3 different options for people that may be interested in doing more work in this particular way. So, oh, there we are. Sorry. Okay, so a foundation session is my introductory session actually to all of my one-on-one work. And basically it's a session that allows us to meet one-on-one, to kind of check each other out, see if we're a good fit. But we'll explore what's stirring, what's calling you, what's happening. And we'll start by looking at things that you're facing through a new lens, enabling you to see new perspectives, new possibilities. And then we will begin to work on, in that first session, we'll just take a dive into one particular aspect. And if at the end of the session, you feel like you would like to do more work, then that leads to a 6-session journey over 3 months, where we will really dive into this in a much, much deeper way. So that's the first offering. The second one is coming up in February, which is actually a workshop called Enter the Dragon. So join me for 2 hours and let me be your tour guide. I'll explain that in a moment. Where we'll look at the dragon in the room. What does that mean? What is the dragon in the room? What does it represent? And how can we use the dragon that normally creates fear and anxiety around us to be something positive? They say that dragons guard thresholds. In mythology, you never meet a dragon in the village square. It'll always be guarding a cave or guarding a hoard, or he'll be at a gateway somewhere. But dragons are not just threats. They're also guardians. And how we befriend the dragon is very, very important. How we get the dragon to work with us and us to work with the dragon. So that's the second one coming up, and there will be more information about that on my next monthly newsletter. And then the last piece is the offering of a men's group. Currently got 2 men's groups running. And it really is a place for men, a soulful place for men to gather, to receive support and to be in community. We're facing more and more challenges today that are unprecedented, that our fathers and our grandfathers, our forefathers knew nothing about. So we don't have their guidance. So we need to get together. And I believe that today, more than ever, men need to be in the company of other men more and more now. It's such an important place for us to be. So, gentlemen, I want to say a big, big, big thank you for taking your time this evening. And I'm going to close with a poem that really meant a lot to me as I went through this particular time of my life, that triggered everything that's kind of happened to me since. And it's as important to me, this poem, as the Dante and the Dark Wood piece is. So just please sit and listen carefully. It's a poem by David White, and it's called Easter Morning in Wales. A garden inside me, unknown, secret, neglected for years. The layers of its soil, deep and thick. Trees in the corners with branching arms, and the tangled briars like broken nets. Sunrise through the misted orchard. Morning sun turns silver on the pointed twigs. I have woken from the sleep of ages, and I am not sure if I am really seeing, or dreaming, or simply astonished. Walking towards sunrise, to have stumbled into the garden where the stone was rolled from the tomb of longing. To have stumbled into the garden where the stone was rolled from the tomb of longing.